This is the Write With Me live stream number 21. I'm working on Island Dawn on Maui. It's one of my Maui Desire Romance series, or my Maui Desire Series, where I write romance. I also write thrillers as AaronRLinsdau.com. You can see the posters back here. But also, if you want to check out a free romance, you can download my book, Moonlight at Wailea, on my website, AaronBelsing.com. Today I'm going to be dictating chapter 28, looking at my notes here on my iPad, where I'm going to dictate my book, and that's how I write almost all my books, is using dictation. Going to put my headset on here, and my voice is a little raspy, unfortunately. It's been quite smoky here in the inland northwest. Makes it a little bit difficult to do that, so I will do my best. I don't want to lose my voice, because my voice is how I write. It's kind of been a thing. Alrighty. Alright, the future, chapter 28. And Mara and Dean are working on the house. Things are going well. They had their love scene a couple chapters ago. And by the way, I'm posting more videos on my dictation sessions on my YouTube channel. Check out links below. They're in the regular videos, not the live stream videos. So if you want to see even more chapter dictations, please go check those out. I've got a lot of them, and a lot, like, I don't even know, 18, 20, and then I've got maybe like 70 to load. So I've got a lot of stuff to load. Super exciting. So let's get into it, shall we? Okay. The good days, the future. Island Dawn on Maui, Chapter 28, the future. Standing inside Glenn's home, Standing inside the cool air in the morning in Glenn's home, Mara and Dean looked over the property plans that they had gotten from Calvin. It had taken some effort to pick up the surveys from the county, and they struggled with a bit to get through the paperwork. Fortunately, Calvin was capable, and he knew a couple of people at the county office and was able to get them. Now, Mara and Dean could really see what they had on paper from the air. As they spread the huge sheet of paper across the table, they began marveling at all that they didn't even know was there. Mara said, "Oh my gosh, Dean, I had no clue that there were other outbuildings buried in the jungle. I mean, 5 acres isn't that big, but I thought we found everything." Dean glanced over the paper and rubbed his fingers over the cool, crinkling sheet and said, "I'm absolutely shocked too. I thought we walked the whole property. I think we need to go on a little bit of an expedition." Now I can see why the appraiser didn't hit as high as we expected versus what Kenji said from what Glenn said. So I bet you there's a lot more to this. Shall we go on a little exploration? Sure thing. But first let me take a photo of this so we don't get totally lost and trash this county paper, Mara said. She whipped out her phone and took a couple of snaps of the plans of the property, and that way they could navigate as they went. In a few minutes, they clomped down the wood plank steps on the property and began walking around. Dean glanced up and called out to Wes and his crew working on the roof and the eaves of the house. "How's it going there, Wes?" The big man waved back, standing from a blue fiberglass ladder, and he said, "The crew should be done with the eaves and all the repairs in a couple days. Hopefully that's okay." Mara looked up and down at the sawdust and destruction First, she walked up to the boards, disheartened, looking at what had been torn off the house. But when she stomped on them with her hiking boots, they immediately crumbled into dust and termite droppings. She jumped back, looking at the wood, and said, "Oh my gosh, this looks like some rotten wood out of the forest on one of my hikes in northern Cascades. I can't believe it's this torn up." West looked down. "Hey, I found one of those termite pieces of wood." "Is everything this bad?" Mara called back. West shrugged. "Not exactly sure. We're just finding as we go, and Dean already authorized us to tear those things off when they're bad." Mara snapped around and looked at Dean, and he looked at Mara with his eyebrows raised. She thought about lashing out for a moment because he had made some authorizations that she wasn't aware of. She beckoned him to continue walking towards the jungle paths that they had carved, and once they were out of earshot, Mara said, "Dean, I thought we were supposed to work together on this thing. I mean, you didn't tell me that they're going to start tearing off boards." Dean looked at her up and down and thought for a moment before responding. Said, "You're right. I suppose I should have asked you, but the wood is literally rotten. There's nothing to do. It needs to be replaced. But I want to know the budget and where we're going with this," she replied. "I mean, we need to manage this. We don't have infinite money, and you said yourself, all of your money is tied up, and look at me. I still live in boxes." Dean could hear the irritation growing in Mara's voice. He reached out and held her shoulder and said, "You're right. I should have asked you. I knew everything needed to be replaced, but I just wanted to get things going. You were tied up in meetings until almost 10 a.m., and with those guys standing around, we're paying them whether they're working or not." Mara licked her lips and flexed her shoulders a bit, breathed in the cool morning air that was turning warm, and then breathed out as she heard the yellow birds chirping in the nest not too far away. "All right, just I guess I'm never been used to this level of effort. I'm kind of afraid to go check out these other little outbuildings." Dean shook his head. His t-shirt, let's see, his Hawaiian-style red dirt shirt from Kauai flexing across his broad chest, and he shrugged and said, "That's unfortunately the way it's going to be. If we don't get the basic stuff taken care of, we'll never get out of the hole. And whether we rent this place out or turn it into something or even sell it, I mean, I don't want to lose $1.5 million. I'm sure you don't either." And Dean looked down at her and tilted his head, tilted his head in a concerned way with his eyebrows raised, saying, and he continued, "Look, I know this is super hard. You've never been on a major construction project from what you've said, right?" Mara struggled with that thought for a moment and said, "I've been on all these corporate teams, but honestly, no, I have not been on big construction sites. You got me there." He held out his hands in a defensive posture and said, "Then I need you to trust me, but I will absolutely, when I have those guys work, I will let you know. But when you're on a phone call at work till 10 a.m., which isn't a problem, I know you need the money, what are we supposed to do? We need to figure this out." Mara turned and began walking through the jungle, looking at her phone for directions, and she called over her shoulder, "I'm sorry, it's just, I'm so not used to this level of expense, this level of work. I mean, I'm great with policies and procedures and human resources, but I have to admit, I feel just a little bit dumb. At that, Dean yelled, "Hey, hang on just a second." Mara turned around and looked at him, her boots mushing in the wet jungle mass of leaves. And he said, "Hey, hang on." He grabbed both of her shoulders gently, and with the kindest eyes he could possibly muster, said, "I know this is super difficult, and you've never done something like this before, but you are kicking butt." I mean, for somebody to come out of Seattle who has never been in construction, never done anything of this magnitude, you are doing incredible. And with that, he reached around and hugged her tight and picked her up and swirled her around. She leaned her head back and then began giggling. Her laughter, the sound of her laughter forced several birds to begin cawing and squawking, and they exploded out of the trees. At that, they stood there spinning around, both laughing. He sat her back down, and she looked at him. "You are surprisingly strong." He looked down at his bicep. "I hit the gym. What do you expect?" She shook her head. No, that's a different strong. Trevor and I hit the gym, but that was different." "Oh," Dean chuckled. He looked down at his boots, his jeans, and his t-shirt, and he said, "This is what construction strong looks like. I am an architect, I'm a designer, but I still help out, and it's just different." Mara looked him up and down, then looked at his arms. She reached out and grabbed his bicep and tricep and began squeezing it. Dean reflexively flexed his arm to harden his muscles, and she could only barely press into his skin. She whistled out loud. "Okay, now I can see why you're such an animal in bed." With that, Dean leaned over and kissed her. "Okay, let's go find this place. Shall we? Lead on." Mara turned around, smiling, the tension gone in the air, and she began using her phone to navigate. In several minutes, they wandered through the jungle, wishing they'd brought a machete to hack their way. After slipping and falling once, Dean, now covered in a light layer of mud, and Mara helped him up. She was like, "This is not the sexiest experience, is it?" He called back over her shoulder, "No, definitely not. But it sure is fun anyway, isn't it?" With that, Mara's mood lightened as she hacked through with her hands and stomping on the shrubs. And then, in a moment, she said, "There it is." They broke through a wall of greenery that had been nearly grown up completely and pressed against a small cottage. Wow, I had no idea. My uncle never took me here that I remember. She began looking at the paint and the siding, and her excitement began to subside as she started looking at the chips of the wood, the eaves, and the deck. As Dean pushed his way through the jungle, he came face to face with Mara's back and nearly crashed into her backside. "Whoa, hang on." And then he paused and looked up. "Oh, wow. This thing is completely encased in jungle." "Yeah, no kidding. My uncle never showed me this, or at least that I remember." "Oh my gosh. I wonder if Kenji knows about this." "He must. I mean, that's why he said this property has got more than we have ever imagined. Let's look around this thing." They began clawing their way through the wet leaves, stomping on them. With the rain shower that had passed through in the morning, everything smelled of musty mildew and cracked leaves as they smashed their way around. Dean began rapping on the siding on the walls, finding a few boards had deteriorated, but not too many were ruined, and Mara noticed what he was doing. Tapping on the gourd to see how it is. Yeah, I just want to get a feel for what we're in for on this thing. She smiled and looked lighter and more energetic than she had in several days as she pushed her way around the building. When she reached a window, she tried to stand up on her tiptoes, but she couldn't see in, and neither could Dean. This thing must have a deck or a subfloor, he said. Here, let me give you a boost. Let's see what the heck's in there. We could just keep hacking our way around. What fun would that be, Dean said. With that, he reached down, put his shoulder under Mara's backside, and lifted her up in the air, hoisting her. At that, she squealed at the experience. I haven't been lifted up like that since I was a little girl. She held onto the door frame, or to the window frame, and looked in. What the? She slowly said. Dean, grunting under her weight, said, You're light, but you're not that light. Give me some info here, would you? Thanks. You're supposed to say, I weigh like nothing. Well, there's furniture in here. This place looks cute inside. Let's find the entrance. With that, he slipped her down off of his shoulder and dropped her down, gently holding onto her waist. She looked around. That was impressive. Did you work for the cheerlead, or were you on the cheer squad or gymnastics? He said, Nope, just a lot of bags of Portland cement. With that, she shot him another look. Really? I'm worth a bag of cement? He waved his hand and shooed her on and said, All right, enough comparing yourself to a bag of cement. You were way sexier than that sack of paper, or that sack of cement I used to haul around. With that, she turned around and began continuing stomping through the leaves against the house. In several minutes, they worked their way around and found the entrance of the decking. It had been overgrown with vines, dripping with water, and they had spiraled up on the what was formerly painted white, now well chipped off. Dean reached out and began tearing at the fig vines that had spiraled up, and it took several yanks before he broke them. Even though they were thin, they were surprisingly strong, and they pressed into Dean's hand. He looked at the mark. He's like, wow, that stuff is way tougher than I thought. Mara looked at his hand, pressing the flesh open, pressing his hand open, and said, well, you're not wounded, won't have to go to the ER, thank goodness. Gee, thanks, Nurse Ratchet, he said. She looked at him with an odd look. Oh, you've never heard that? He asked. No, obviously that's not my generation. Oh, we should watch that sometime. It's not a sexy movie, but it's educational, that's for sure. She turned around and stomped up, pulling the leaves and everything away till she got through the door. Dean helped pull the tearings of the vines and everything as they made their way to the door. Well, what if we don't have a key? Dean looked at her with an odd look. Well, I guess we'll just break into our own home, right? She reached out, grabbed the marred brass handle and gave it a turn. It took effort to turn it, and she was forcing it, and he said, I bet you it's a salt spray. Do you want me to give it a try? Sure thing. I can feel it move. It doesn't feel locked, but it's just freaking impossible. She stepped to the side on the porch, kicking off some extra palm fronds, and he reached down with both hands and flexed her forearm. Flexed his forearm as he squeezed the handle. Her eyes widened as she saw him grip the handle with all his might, amazed at how strong he was and capable. It took several yanks and twists, but the latch finally released and the door popped open. The hinges screeched as it opened, and he said, wow, if this wasn't an island, I think this was like some horror movie scene with those screeching hinges. hey, we better take off our shoes. We're muddy as heck. So they plopped their shoes on the deck and then walked into the place. The space wasn't large. It was just enough for a studio apartment size room. They saw a door and a small kitchenette in the space with a teak wood breakfast table with formica counters and an electric stove with a small sink, a stainless sink, and a Delta chrome faucet. Well, this is something right out of the 1980s. Mara walked up to it and then turned the faucet on, just trying her luck. Well, at least the water shut off. As Dean wandered around the room, he looked back at her. Oh, thank goodness. If the water wasn't off and something broke, this place would be destroyed. Really? They shut the water off on these things? I never thought about that. Oh, Mara. Dean shook his head. I've seen properties utterly obliterated by water. Thank God they shut it off. He walked over to the light switch and clicked it on, and nothing happened. The fan didn't come on, the lights didn't come on. And Dean flexed his weight up and down, and he could hear the creaking of the boards. He looked down and pulled up the rug that was there. Well, at least the floor looks intact, even if it is a bit creaky. He stepped away, and Mara came over to the spot and tried to flex her weight up and down. Nothing. I guess you need to lay off on those bagels in the morning. She patted his abdomen, and though she felt the solid mass there, she knew he outweighed her by 80 pounds. So she said, she looked up in his dark brown eyes, oh, just kidding. And she turned around, spinning on her heel, kicking her foot up, and then walked down the very short hallway. Dean followed after her, and they found the bathroom, which was in surprisingly good shape for how long the place had looked abandoned. The toilet had a dark ring in it, and it was clean, Dean said. Just that's lime and rust scale, nothing that can't be fixed. The sink with its formica top was just covered in dust, and the small shower with the frosted glass looked like it was in shape. Hey, this isn't too bad, actually, other than the jungle trying to take the place over. They walked across the hallway and opened the first bedroom and peered in. They found a small dresser and a double bed pressed up against the wall with an open closet with nothing in it. They went to the second room and found the same thing. As they walked along, opening these doors, the echo from the long abandoned place rippled through, the clatter from the doors echoed through the building, making it feel unalive, as though it had no love. Mara asked Dean, hey, hang on just for a minute. Let me open and close the door. She clattered the 2-panel door open and closed a few times, and then she said, do you hear that echo? Yeah, of course. That's the echo of a place that hasn't had love in a while. Dean paused and looked at her quizzically and asked, how so? There's something about a home, when it doesn't have people in it for a while, they become sad. Ooh, are you getting philosophical on me? And she said, no, it's actually a thing. But this is incredible. I mean, what if we cut the jungle back, cut a path through here? I mean, this literally could be like a rental, couldn't it? At that, Dean stopped and turned around and looked at her. He raised his eyebrows and said, a rental? With that, Mara looked at the floor and scooted her socks back and forth against the runner rug, the old worn beige runner rug, and she looked up back at him and said, I did say that, didn't I? Dean pursed his lips and said, hey, you, not me. You're starting to get a vision for this place, aren't you? With that, Mara walked up to him, hugged him tightly, and then walked him into the main room, stood up, put her arms out, and began spinning around slowly, breathing in and breathing out. Dean silently watched her do her pirouette, and when she stopped, she opened her eyes and looked straight at him. This feels just like the apartment that Stephanie and I live in, but without the cardboard boxes. And the best part is, it's in a jungle. How cool is this? Alrighty, perfect. That was, let me stop there, done. That was chapter 28 of Island Dawn on Maui. This is where Mara and Dean discover another small building on their property, and things are getting pretty good, but trouble's coming soon. So let me find out how many words that was so I can share that with you. And that was 24 minutes of recording. Copy and put that into good old Scrivener. Word count 3,292 words. Booyah! There you go. You can see the word count right there. Okay, that was very successful. I can't complain about that. I got some character tension in, which is exactly what I wanted, but some fun and enjoyment too, showing off Mara and Dean's personalities. This has been a super fun experience to do these live streams with you. Thank you very much for stopping by and watching. Please check out links below to aaronbelsing.com, where you can get a copy of Moonlight at Wailea for free. Just sign up for my email list, and Island Dawn, by the time you watch this, will probably be available for sale, and you can enjoy reading about Mara and Dean's adventures. Also, do note that I use different names typically for dictation, because when I dictate into my microphone, I use names that don't have problems. There's other names in the world of names. I pull them from, where do I pull them from? Oh, the Census Bureau. 52,000 names. But I have to have a name that dictates correctly. Otherwise, it makes editing really, really hard. And that's a big thing. So when you actually watch this and you read the book, you might actually have a different character name, which makes it kind of different. But hopefully you enjoyed this experience, and also check out my thrillers at aaronrlinsdau.com. We've got the Magellan Deception and a bunch of SERA Archives novels as well. Thank you very much for watching, and I appreciate your support. Please like, comment, and subscribe.